Welcome back to the MyRestyling channel. A friend asked me to transform this unfinished wooden cabinet and make it glossy black like the rest of the bathroom cabinets, so it can be placed here next to the mirror. Let's see right away how you can turn an unfinished wooden cabinet into a super modern piece of furniture. I'll show you. It was a completely unfinished piece of furniture. You can see here there's the little door, and the whole cabinet is totally raw wood. It was also kept in a basement for many years, so it's got a lot of moisture on it. So this is the classic kind of cabinet where you would normally need to apply an anti-tannin treatment, but since we're going to make it black, we don't care at all about the anti-tannin. Anyway, even if the tannin comes through, you won't see it. I cleaned it well with a damp microfiber cloth. Obviously, you can't degrease it here with hot water, ammonia, or baking soda, because since it's raw wood, it would warp completely. So I just cleaned it with a damp cloth. This is what you should do when you have unfinished furniture, since the paint will stick perfectly because it's completely raw and porous. Be careful not to use too much water because raw wood absorbs a lot, so just a slightly damp cloth is enough to remove the dust. So I took our Nightfall, which is our deep black. Remember that this is not a ready-to-use paint, but a paint you need to prepare. All the instructions are on the website and also in the YouTube videos. With any other paints, I would have told you to dilute it, but our paint isn't particularly thick, so even on raw wood, you can apply it directly, undiluted. You still won't have any trouble because it's not as thick as other chalk paints or clay paints on the market. It covers really well, and on raw wood, one coat is definitely enough, or maybe one coat with a few touch-ups, but definitely not two coats because it's a very, very deep black, extremely pigmented, and it really covers very well. Here, you can see on the side, there are some moisture stains, which obviously won't go away because the raw wood is soaked with moisture, since this little cabinet was kept in a garage for many years. And if you had used white paint, these stains would definitely have come through, so you would have needed to apply an anti-tannin product or at least a sealer. But by applying black paint, all these stains won't be visible, so I just skipped that step altogether. Instead, I used white paint, our whiteness, on the central part of the cabinet door. But even here, I didn't use any anti-tannin product, sealer, or anything else, because the central part is made of plywood. Besides, it didn't have any major stains, but as you know, plywood isn't real wood. It's a piece of hardboard, so it doesn't release tannins, which means I had no need to use a sealer. There wouldn't have been any stains coming through, so I went ahead and applied my white paint without any worries. So even if you're using white paint, you don't always have to use an anti-tannin product or a sealer. It depends on the material underneath. I decided to add a decoration to the cabinet door using this stencil with black paint. It really seemed like the stencil was just the right size for this cabinet door, so I took a bit of Nightfall, dabbed off the excess on some paper, and started dabbing to do the stencil. Remember, when you're doing stencils, you need to remove most of the paint, otherwise it'll seep underneath and smudge everywhere. So always dab off the paint on a piece of paper first, especially since our clay paints aren't super thick, like I mentioned before, so it's even more important to dab off the excess. Here's my stencil, then I repositioned it. You have to be careful when you reposition it because it needs to be exactly in the right spot. So I repositioned it and kept going until I finished the whole cabinet door. Here's my finished stencil. It turned out perfect. I really like it. For protection, I decided to use this resin from Color Resin, which is a new product and will make the cabinet super shiny. So remember, if you want it glossy, you absolutely have to use a glossy resin. This resin is also very, very protective, so it's highly resistant to impacts and super water repellent, making it perfect for bathrooms. When you apply it, it looks a little white at first, but don't worry because it turns transparent. Plus, this resin doesn't leave a lot of marks, unlike what usually happens with glossy protectives for chalk paint. So I'd say it's definitely approved. Just be careful, of course, around the corners and edges, not to let any drips form, because obviously they don't look good. And these resins tend to drip and run down. So make sure to always go over the edges and corners carefully with your brush. Before finishing everything, I decided to add one of these two little knobs that I made a few months ago with resin. If you want to see how they're made, there are several videos here on the channel. And here's the cabinet finished and placed in the bathroom. We also put a little air freshener on top. The cabinet is super modern, super glossy, just like the rest of the bathroom fixtures. Everything was painted, even inside, so it became super, super modern. So even with our clay paints, as you can see, you can paint furniture and make it look modern, not just shabby style. I could have used an enamel paint too, but it wouldn't have been as durable as our clay paint with the addition of Color Resin. Initially, as I showed you, this cabinet was supposed to be placed a bit to the side of the mirror, but instead a hairdryer was put there. Since it was black, it looked too bulky, so the cabinet was placed here near the shower and was mounted upside down because a little air freshener was put on top. All our clay paints and our products can be found on our website, MyRestyling.com, or in our store in San Giorgio, Bigarello, in the province of Mantua at Piazza Giotto 4. Come by and visit us so we can show you how to make these beautiful modern cabinets. I'll see you next time.